everyone, I'm C.D. Jensen, author of The Crown and the Caged God, and Marie and I are in these magical woods which have a lot of mosquitoes, and so if the camera shakes, it's because Marie is evicting a mosquito from, but this is I grew up here. These are like a forest that separates the hills and the flats. That'll make sense to you when you read the book. But so recently I did a reading, like a public reading of the book, and it was about world building. So it was sort of about world building. It was about, like, from an evolutionary perspective, populating my world with its bestiary. And it was really scientific, and so people asked me, like, how I handle science in the book. It's a good question, because this is typical in some ways as a fantasy novel. It's typical in some ways, but it's uncharacteristic of fantasy literature in others, and especially when it gets into the sciences. I'm unaware of like an epic fantasy novel, you know, like fencing, that is as advanced in its physiology, or in which physiology plays this prominent but like, I'm a professor of physiology, and we all take our background when we write, and that influences our storytelling, our world. Let me just tell you how my world building worked. So I started with the premise that, I see the camera shaking, and it's okay, because the magical woods have little tiny, like, Tinkerbells. So my premise, right, it's centuries ago, and if all of the people alive in this centuries ago time were basically me, right? If they were, if they had thoughts like I think, if they prioritize like how I prioritize, how would science and technology be different, right? Today or yesterday or whatever. So like, Marie has ancestors, I have ancestors, all of you have ancestors, these little mosquitoes having, the Tinkerbells have ancestors, and they have ancestors, and they have ancestors, and they have ancestors. And those ancestors, maybe Tinkerbells aside, those ancestors built civilization. And if they were all a bunch of me in terms of their thinking patterns, how would civilization be? Like, let's say it's the Middle Ages or it's Renaissance. What would that look like if it were just a bunch of me? And my hunch is there would be no, like, firearms, you know, gunpowder, or there would be no internal combustion engines, there would be no electricity, but our understanding of, like, anatomy and physiology would be really advanced. I mean, that trajectory would just be, like, exploding, whereas other features of the sciences would be basically typical in terms of, you know, the Middle Ages. And so that's the foundation. Now, the people in it, right, the characters, it's not just a bunch of me, right? It's not just over and over me and me again. Every character has their own agency, right? They have their own backstory, they have their own force story, they have their own, like, goals and feelings and incentives and like personality and profession. Like, the characters are all unique. It's not just a bunch of me, but that's the book, right? That's how it's so. Now, the way that I write this stuff, the way that I write the sciences is a little bit hard, because again, some of these sciences are but okay, so let me preface this. This to me is basically nonfiction, because what the screen you're watching it on, that's pure sci-fi, right? That doesn't make any sense to me. Little microprocessors and AI and like that to me is like fiction, whereas this is the most non-fiction version of the world that I can create. But again, it's difficult to write some of the sciences that are more advanced and keep that language consistent with the sciences that are arrested in time. Especially since I'm burying a lot of little Easter eggs, right? I'm concealing clues about events to come in a lot of those physiological passages. So they're not just there to display the sciences, they are rebar for the story structure. But okay, I'm gonna leave it at that. I hope you have magical woods, the mosquitoes leave you alone. And I hope your sciences are behaving according to your will, right? This one right here. Your physiology is working for you, so you don't need to visit the like Gaia, you know, version, the like real life version of Gaia's hospitals, like a Far Heart hospital. Okay, that's it. Bye, everyone.